Okay, well, here we are then. Well, I think a lot of people are confused about the differences between traditional and cozy mysteries or hard-boiled versus noir. Greater St. Louis Sisters in Crime is offering a few answers. You're invited to Zoom for half hours on YouTube as President Fedora Amos, that's me, interviews working writers. First up is Laine Boyd. Now, in addition to chatting about Laine's writing, we're going to explore the meaning of classic mystery. I recently received results from a completely non-scientific survey. My responders consisted of avid readers, mostly women, who buy books and love mysteries. Well, I asked them to choose their favorites, their favorite subgenres from 8 categories: classic, private eye, true crime, historical, suspense thriller, police procedural, amateur sleuth, and science fiction fantasy. Yes, the categories overlap, and yes, they're a bit arbitrary. We'd love to hear your suggestions and comments. Send them to Fedora at fedoraamos.com. Perhaps we should have fewer categories or more. Why? The huge volume of books published each year grows at such an explosive rate that we need more specific words to locate our preferences and to describe them to others so that they too can enjoy what we enjoy and that we will have something to talk with people about. Well, classic mystery is tied with historical as the most popular subgenres in my little unscientific poll. What does the term mean? Well, here is Belk Library's definition. Sometimes called the old-fashioned detective story, this subgenre was at its height in the 1930s. It generally features a mysterious death, a closed circle of suspects who all have motives and reasonable opportunity to commit the crime. The central character is the detective who, by logical deduction from the facts in evidence, solves the mystery. My own simplified definition is legal authority figures fighting and/or solving crimes. Some examples are Chester Gould's Dick Tracy from the 30s, and from now, Elaine Veit's medical examiner, Angela Richmond. Now, let me introduce Laine Boyd. Laine has had a lifelong love affair with books and began writing when she was a young child. She now has 6 published traditional mysteries and 1 nonfiction. This is from her official biography. I write clean stories that are exciting, engaging, and often humorous. I incorporate several of my personal interests in my books: love of animals, love of music, love of properly prepared tea, and that I can vouch for. You know, she is my critique partner, and she is fastidious when it comes to tea. Love of chocolate and good wine, and I'm happy about that one especially, and love of happy endings. Of all of my mysteries, only one of my readers has been able to figure out one of the endings ahead of time. My readers love the twists and turns and the challenge of figuring out who done it, or how, or why. I'm passionate about writing. My readers tell me that my books make them laugh, cry, or hold their breath. I hope not all at the same time. That would be awkward. All admit to staying up late because they can't put my books down. A few have said I've scared them out of their wits, but personally, I think they're just a little wussy. I do volunteer work. I'm a scratch cook, a trained musician, a mother of grown children, and married to the love of my life. I battle pat hair on a daily basis, but always with a smile on my face. Okay, almost always with a smile on my face. Well, Laine, classic, I think, has the word class in it. And so classic mysteries are supposed to be classy, which I think yours are. Well, what led you to the world of writing in the first place? Why do you write?
I have always loved books. My parents read to me from infancy, and that was something I did with my own children. As soon as I had them home from the hospital, I read to them. By the time I was 3, I was reading. And by the time I was 4 or 5, my parents had gotten me into a monthly book club, and I would wait very anxiously for the mailman to come and bring my book of the month, which I would then usually read in one day, and then I had a whole other month to wait. As a child, I was very, very shy. I didn't like to talk to anyone outside of my family, and but I would express myself by writing. And I started to write when I was in first grade because I was afraid to talk to anybody. I suffered from debilitating shyness for many years. I got over that, by the way. And I wrote my first story when I was 6, and my first grade teacher had given us an assignment where she said, write a story about anything that you want to. So all my classmates had 1 and 2 page stories that said things like, I have a ball, my ball is red, I like to play with my ball. I wrote a story about a family, and the dad wouldn't let them have a dog, and I really wanted a dog. So by the time my whole story was done, I had characters and a plot and a happy ending where the little girl who was hiding a dog, the house caught fire and the dog saved the whole family, saved the day, and then her mean old father allowed her to keep the dog. Well, that story went on for pages and pages, and the teacher had it starting at the ceiling and it dripped onto the floor. So when my parents saw that, they recognized their cruel selves, and next thing I had a dog. So that showed me early the power of the pen. And I learned that even though I didn't like to talk to people, I was very happy to write things. And then later on, my teachers encouraged me to write. They loved my stories, and I loved their classes. But I think I got really serious when I got tired of, after I went through all my favorite authors for mystery books, because I do love mysteries, I got tired of books that were this much story and this much garbage. And I thought, you know what, I think I can do better. And I did. And the first publisher I sent my manuscript to contacted me a few weeks later and said, can I send you a contract? And that was when I really started to get serious about writing. And by that time, I was a young mother.
Well, I think your story certainly had a happy ending, your dog story.
Yes, I got a dog out of it.
Absolutely. And have had dogs ever since, I think, haven't you?
I have. I absolutely love animals. I have all rescues. I have a rescue dog and 2 rescue cats. And I've always had a little bit of a menagerie. And I include them in all my stories because I think they add so much to your life. And so I have, my characters have pets. Some of them are police dogs because they are, I have a canine cop, and others are just simply pets. But I always do try to promote rescue and shelter adoptions because those dogs need a home and they have so much love to give.
Well, it doesn't sound like you have any problems putting your tush in a chair and starting to write on any given day. Could you describe a little bit about what a day of writing is for you? And you may even include, she wrote a book in what, about 3 weeks? Because she was on fire for that one. But surely you don't do that every day. That must have been like morning till morning.
I had a bad dream one night, and I woke up in the middle of the night and I was just so upset. It was a very frightening dream, and I couldn't get back to sleep until I mentally reworked that dream. Otherwise, I would just go back to the dream. And as I lay in bed trying to work through my nightmare, the longer I worked through it, the more I thought, this really sounds like a good book. So I got up and I pretty much wrote about 14 hours a day for 3 weeks. And as I was writing, I thought, well, you know, this would just make a really good series. And so I just finished the third book of a trilogy, and my test readers and my editor have loved, my test readers have read all three books. My editor is finishing up on the second and will soon have the third. So everybody has really loved it, and it started as a bad dream. But that is not typical for me to be that on fire to where I tell my husband to get his own dinner. I tell my husband to just go away and leave me alone. And please take care of the dog because I just don't have time to take her out. I've got to get this down. And I've had that happen on the trilogy and on my new release, which is Murder Most Unstable. That was another one that I just woke up with and had to get it down. But for a typical day, I may decide that I need to do some research. I have quite a lot of people that are experts in their field. Some of them are police officers and detectives. Some are lawyers. If I need legal, I have some medical people who will tell me how to kill people or injure them to where there's the right amount of blood. And I have people who know weapons and guns and like internet security, things like that, whatever I'm going to need. I may just spend a day or two doing research, but I do try to write every single day. I will write anywhere from a minimum of 4 hours to a maximum of 14, at which time I'm going cross-eyed.
I would think so. My word. Well, you just mentioned your newest release and showed us the cover of it. Can you talk a little more about that? What is it like?
Yes. This was a book that I wrote in only 4 months, which again is pretty fast, especially considering that we were moving into an old house and a new house and trying to fix up our old house. And I didn't do nearly as much moving as I did writing. But it was one of those stories that it just all came to me. And it starts out with kind of a crotchety old lady who is angry because she's expecting a visitor and he's late, and she does not like her time wasted. She has told everybody that she's dying, and she hears a knock at the door, and she's really going to give her expected visitor a piece of her mind for keeping her waiting. She answers the door and she just says, "Oh, it's you." Next thing, her visitor arrives and finds her dead. And so our detectives, all of my detectives carry through. If you like to read the same people, then this series has all of the same characters. And they have to determine who would want to murder an 89-year-old woman who is dying anyway. And so that is the kickoff. She was in her younger days a champion horseback rider. She had won many contests all over the country, and she has a stable full of prize horses that are worth millions. She also has a whole lot of people that think they're going to benefit from her death. And so there's a lot of mystery in that book. There's a lot of excitement and a lot of humor. So I had a great deal of fun writing that book. I adore horses. And so I got to talk about the horses and the very fancy barn that they inhabit. And that was that book.
And that book is called, and show it again, and tell us where you can get it.
Murder Most Unstable.
Hold it up just a little bit higher. There, perfect.
Okay. Murder Most Unstable is my new release. I do keep a large stock of all my books at home, and I am very happy to either mail books to people if they contact me at laineboydauthor@yahoo.com. I will be happy to personalize and sign those books. I do sell them at local venues once they open up.
Fingers crossed.
Yes. I'll be at, if you're local, I will be at the Wildwood Farmers Market in a couple of weeks, as well as Celebrate Wildwood. But you can buy them on Amazon. If you are local within 50 miles of St. Louis, I'll meet you someplace so that I can personalize your book and sign it for you. So I do keep a large stock in my home, or you can buy them at any bookstore or on Amazon.
Terrific. Well, who would you say has influenced your writing? That is, do you have models for this classy mystery that doesn't have a lot of sex, or it has only offstage violence, for example? What about those things?
Well, my favorite authors are Agatha Christie, who I just adore, and Mary Higgins Clark. I like Kathy Reichs, and several others. I prefer books that don't have a lot of offensive language or offensive scenes, because that just takes away from the mystery itself. So those are some of the writers that I really like. Other people that have influenced me are my editor, Cassandra Polson, who is just very, very talented and a lovely person as well. And she has helped me to develop characters and scenes. Also, a few years ago, I joined both the national and local branches of Sisters in Crime. And within Sisters in Crime, we have different critique groups. And I have two very talented writers in mine, Fedora and I don't know if I should use her pen name, Mary Kate Mandeville, who is not yet published, but hopes to be soon. And we get together once a week now by phone, and we critique 10 pages of each other's work. And I find that their input is very, very valuable. And it helps me to send a better version of the first draft to my publisher so that she has a little bit less to do. So between the Sisters in Crime and my editor, and then just my own enjoyment, knowing what I like to read, as well as, my teachers when I was in school, they encouraged me quite a lot to write. It's just something I have a passion for and love doing it.
And so, what is your advice for aspiring mystery writers? Are there books that you would recommend, or you certainly recommend Sisters in Crime, don't you?
Yes, of course.
Well, what else?
Even when Sisters in Crime has their regular monthly meetings, when we used to meet together, we would just have some really fun exercises to do. And now we do everything through Zoom. But there are a lot of helpful hints there and different exercises you can do. I think what I would say to somebody who wants to write is, number one, start. You have to start somewhere. You can always change it, and I assure you that you will. But also, you need to kind of figure out what works best for you. Some authors say, oh, you must have an outline. You have to have an outline and follow it. Well, if you're not the type of person that works well like that, then you're not going to be happy using an outline. Some people say, I have no idea who the murderer is going to be until I work it out. And other people say, oh no, I have to have everything planned out. So I think you have to just experiment and see what works best for you. I know for myself, I like to start with the crime and say, okay, who's going to get killed? Who's going to do it? Why are they going to do it? How are they going to do it? And how are my heroes going to figure it out? And so I kind of work backwards in my head, and then I type it forward. And that's what works for me. But I think that no matter how many authors you ask, you're going to get that many answers.
I expect so. Is there a character in your books that, I mean, certainly every character you write, every character anybody writes has some little bit of that author inside, but is there one that you're especially fond of or think is especially like you?
I don't think there's any one character that you could say, oh, that is me. I have one main character who is very musical, and she's a fair-skinned redhead like I am. And she's a little quirky like I am. But she also is a little bit of a dingbat, and she doesn't like to cook. She doesn't do any housework. She is a symphony player, and her life is kind of narrow. It revolves around her music, her husband, her daughter, and her pets, and her best friend, and there's not much else. So we have a few things in common, and some of my friends thought, oh, well, that's who you are, but it really isn't, because I love to cook, and I do my own housework, and I have a very wide world. So then there's her friend, who is a Vietnamese refugee that came over when she was a little girl with the boat people. And she is a domestic goddess, but she doesn't have any particular abilities outside of homemaking skills, and she has several children. So each of my characters has a little bit of me in it, and then they have other things that have nothing to do with me. So most of my characters are other people that I know. I won't say who, but one of my test readers recognized someone who was a mutual friend. And when he returned the manuscript to me, he leans forward and he says, Laine, the crazy cat lady, was that so-and-so? And I just had to laugh, because I described a crazy cat lady that we both know to a T, and he recognized her. But most people are based on people I know, and they're not always presented in a beautiful light. So I'm not going to incriminate myself any further with that answer.
Okay. Well, I was wondering whether you think it's that part of what you do, the characters that you create, or that you base upon real people, or something else that makes your fans come back for more. What is your secret of appealing to readers?
I have a lot of people who do appreciate that they can pick up a book and it's not full of sex and violence and blood and bad words. That does appeal to an awful lot of my readers. I think the two things are the storylines are so entertaining, and there's so many twists and turns, and they know that I've given them all the clues in the beginning of the book, but they don't know which is a red herring and which is an actual clue. So they really enjoy trying to figure out who done it, or how they done it, or why they done it. And they love my characters. My characters are very real people. Even my like some of my detectives who are dedicated cops, but they're also, they've got families, they've got their own frustrations. One of them's got a daughter who's entering her teen years and driving him just nuts. And you see the part of him that's a cop and a dedicated detective, and then you see the family man, and he's watching his precious little girl turn into a teenager, and it's not always pleasant. So my characters, my readers tell me that they identify with my characters, and that they know exactly what someone is feeling because they've been through it, or they recognize other people. Everybody's had a bad boss, and we have some bad bosses, and everybody knows what office politics, how damaging they can be. And so when they see it in the book, they relate to that sort of thing, or the stress of planning a wedding, or whatever the characters are going through. My readers relate to the characters, and they always come back for more.
Just to get back to classic mystery for a moment, I know that you've had people tell you that you write cozies, but I'm not sure you'd like that designation too well. How would you characterize your own particular subgenre that is yours that you claim?
I would say it's more classic. The word cozy kind of conjures up the idea of kittens and everybody drinking from pretty flowered teacups, and nothing that might scare you or excite you or interest you. Cozy is cutesy. And while some of my characters are kind of cute and some of them are very funny, some of these books are frightening. We certainly we're dealing with murder, and there's nothing real cute about that. So I have never really liked the designation of cozy, because it just has a connotation that I don't think really describes my books. I think they are more classic. They will have a happy ending. And
Well,
I think
justice should prevail in any mystery, I think. And of course, that is kind of a happy ending. It's happy for some and not for others. But it's justice in any event. But I certainly appreciate your talking to us. And let me tell you that next time in episode 2, we are going to be interviewing. I am going to be interviewing. I don't have a mouse in my pocket even. Charlotte Ecker Wiggins, who is a bee expert. Now, talk about an interesting way to kill people. Bees would be the bee's knees, I do believe. So thank you for listening, and hope you enjoy this and the rest of the interviews as we discuss the subgenres of mystery. This is Fedora Amos, president of Greater St. Louis Sisters in Crime.